This video is sponsored by KnucklesOX, Baba Snake, Julio the Boy, Blazing Darkness G, and Danny Mash X. If you'd like to directly support my content, as well as catch it early, have your name credited as a sponsor, or maybe even have your What If Ideas produce its commissions, consider visiting the links to my Patreon and such in the description below. We resume as Bardock and Muezli engage the Wicked Bloodline, stepping forward as a united front against the monolithic presence that is the Universal Tyrants. The unlikely romantic partners launch into a furious high-speed brawl with their former employers and oppressors, causing King Piccolo, Prince Vegeta, and their children to marvel at their growth from the fighters they were before, as they are engaging in a flurry of punching, kicking, and blocking that beautifully mirrors the brutality and grit displayed by Son Goku and Frieza in their opening clash in canon. As from the jump, with a raging counterattack, Bardock and Muezli can prove and display that despite their relationship originally being based out of hatred, discord, discrimination, and greed, the inexplicable love and compatibility Guinea helped them to find is much more potent and easy to attune to than the transactional and hierarchical farce of familial love that binds together King Cold, Cooler, and Frieza when they create a joint force. For example, utilizing the unparalleled visual acuity of her Raditz and eyes against these fated opponents, Muezli acts as the ultimate tactical anchor, taking on the duties of perceiving and defending from attacks by expertly reading the incoming trajectories of the Dastardly Dynasty's moves and redirecting or countering them with her perfect aim and attention to detail, allowing the Cerulean to create weaknesses and openings to exploit. This lets Bardock focus solely on nothing but their offensive in this battle against the fate of annihilation, throwing caution to the wind to put his all into his opening attacks and go all out with the full extent of his power from the start in a way Goku never would, as right now, his Saiyan desire and call for a good fight is equalized entirely by his omnipresent desire for revenge. Thus, activating both the Kaioken and the spirit of the Saiyans from the start, the atmospheric pressure on Namek crumbles around them as Bardock Riot smashes into the galactic tyrants in a blinding sonic boom clash of ki and powered fists. Through their vastly increased power after their training and recovery, leading to new, unique, and mastered abilities, they are doing better than anyone else has so far at resisting a doomed future, genuinely landing critical blows on and even overpowering the individual members of the Wicked Bloodline in short clashes and tests of strength through working together, objectively showing themselves as the better team of fighters. Their power demonstrated through these fierce clashes, moving like a singular, devastating weapon at Muezli's precise direction. Bardock weaves through a jagged flurry of lethal death beams with acrobatic precision. Anticipating Frieza's recovery from an earlier attack, he catches the Galactic Emperor firmly by his tail, spins him with blinding, blurring velocity, and violently dragon throws him directly into the path of an oncoming energy blast from King Cold. For a glorious window of combat, the duo of lovers operates in absolute synchronization. Muezli provides flawless calculated cover fire to instantly clean up any micro mistakes, shouting out structural and vital weak point callouts with as great a grasp of tactical command as any veteran Cerulean warrior to ever live, drastically enhancing Bardock's performance in battle, almost like oatmeal would for granola in the canon story. Meanwhile, Bardock pushes his physical limits to the absolute brink. His Crimson Kaioken aura violently flares and mixes it with his white-hot Saiyan spirit to create a roaring, double-layered cloak of ki that burns away at his stamina incredibly fast, but in turn provides absolutely undeniable, monstrous results in terms of damage dealt, finally cornering the Imperial Trinity. The duo positions themselves for the apex of their assault, the final Revenger Meteor combo. They unleash one last rush attack while charging up a maximum output Super Kaioken times 20 Kamehameha and a brilliantly blinding doubled red-eyed final spirit cannon, as respectively the two parents pull every single ounce of their full power, frustration, longing, and force of will into the attack, holding their fire until they are perfectly pincering the Wicked Bloodline directly between each other and unleashing the cataclysmic energy waves simultaneously so that King Cold, Frieza, and Cooler are hopelessly caught and crushed in the apocalyptic destructive crossfire of both full-powered beams, until the terrifying Conqueror family is finally forced to exert a collective 50% of their power in order to redirect this combined attack, as fate has cruelly dictated. Even after all their feats of valor, even now our heroes still don't have enough power to take out all three evil emperors while using their full strength combined. Meanwhile, as Bardock and Muezli begin to flag in power and endurance as the fight drags on, Frieza, Cooler, and Cold slowly grow more and more adept and synchronous in fighting alongside one another, proving fully that if they are not stopped here and now, their threat to the universe and bond as a family would only grow exponentially, along with their endless terror and power, essentially spelling doom for every being in this solar system and every other one in this universe, as the most malevolent clan in space lie in wait for their chance to dominate all. Because of this, and their growing desperation as their enemies endure more and more of their strongest techniques, Bardock finally endeavors to use the Spirit Bomb, with this going much like it would in canon, just taking a great deal longer, since it's not an exaggeration to suggest that Bardock would want to grow his Spirit Bomb to maybe 3 times the size of the one Goku conjured in canon. And thankfully, with so many strong fighters on Namek, as well as the ability to pull Genki from the surrounding planets, it wouldn't take forever. Not to mention that King Piccolo would still be able to help buy time as Piccolo did originally, likely better even, since he could still borrow energy from Goku, Raditz, Granola, and Vegeta on the sideline to power up further, or the kids could provide Piccolo, Daimao, and Bardock with cover fire from afar, directed by Granola, as they would all fight as desperately and hard as they can to buy even just a second more to charge the Genki Dama. And this is also not not to mention that due to the Cerulean sniper race's affinity for understanding energy blasts so well, it is not impossible that Muezli herself could pick up and master the spirit bomb from the first time she was entrusted one to throw by Bardock. Besides this, because Muezli has been so far ahead of Granola with her mastery over her red eyes, I would argue that it would be possible for her to fully realize her healing potential on her own and attain what would now come to be known as Super Saiyan, a state in transformation of power above the boost one gets from simply activating the second red eye or attacking an opponent's vitals. The ultimate power of her people, while Bardock concentrates on expanding the massive spirit bomb to 3 times its cannon volume, drawing immense Genki from Namek and the surrounding star systems. The Vanguard acts as a frantic front wall of defense, King Piccolo, Goku, Raditz, Granola, and Vegeta throwing themselves into the fray again. But as the minutes drag on, the sheer coordination of the glorious clan that is the Wicked Bloodline begins to overwhelm them. Frieza, Cooler, and King Cold fight with increasingly synchronous malice, rapidly battering and brutalizing the exhausted defenders, and threatening to break through to terminate Bardock and Muezli before the spear could be completed. So seeing the defensive line on the verge of total collapse, it is none other than Elec, who realizes that this is the absolute point of no return. Rather than throwing himself prematurely into the meat grinder though, the cunning broker deliberately pulls back into the smoke, using the chaotic crossfire and desperation to buy himself a vital window of uninterrupted concentration, where he gambles on forcing his body through the grueling, agonizing process of mastering his unleashed power by sheer force of will. Elec channels every ounce of petty tenacity and ambition he has, completely resolved to do what Gas was not yet ready to. Just as Frieza deflects a desperate rush from King Piccolo and prepares a lethal Vanguard assault to finally shatter Bardock's focus, the air pressure in the battlefield completely drops. With a roaring surge of localized heat, ki, and force, Elec steps back onto the battlefield, having fully broken through his biological thresholds, not for the sake of his family, but for his own ego and desires. His ornamental belt of fangs and regal restraints are completely shattered, his purple locks flowing loose as his horns extend proudly, and his physique sharpens into a sleek and immaculately controlled awakened state, now radiating a staggering battle power nearly equal to Cooler's. Elec lunges forward to intercept the tyrants, and for the first time as he fights on equal footing, the universe's top broker proves exactly why he harbored ambitions of mutiny. Moving with dazzling refined speed, the awakened heater completely catches Frieza off guard, burying a heavy ki gauntlet and force fist into the Emperor's abdomen that leaves the tyrant coughing up bile and blood, just as he always dreamed of. Then turning his sights on King Cold, Elec engages the former Bardock in a brutal, high-speed clash of blows, his cunning and raw numbers in terms of power level allowing him to fiercely contend with and even overpower and suppress the 2 standard form tyrants simultaneously. However, Cooler attempts to intervene to put the insolent pointy-eared dreadhead back in his place, but Elec just utilizes the flurry of dirty tactics, key constructs, and high-level evasion to maneuver through the onslaught, as while he cannot outright defeat this transformation-boosted Cooler, and still doesn't like to fight against those evenly matched or stronger than him, Elec's newly mastered power still provides the ultimate, rock-solid anchor and chemical reaction the heroes desperately needed to tie him, his father, and brother down for just a bit longer. Getting his own hands truly dirty for once, Elec goes for broke and buys the precious final seconds by trading devastating blows with the Empire's elite, holding the line with frantic, stubborn pride until the monumental spear of Holy Genki above Bardock is completely primed to drop, at which point he gets the hell out of the way faster than anyone else. Thus, when the technique learned from Akaio is ready, it is of little consequence for Frieza, Cooler, or King Cold to take notice of it, due to its sheer size making the void a near impossibility, with Bardock even confidently roaring as he launches the attack. Now, everything changes. The fate of Planet Namek, Planet Cereal, Planet Vegeta, the universe itself, my own fate, my friends and family's fate, my lovers and children's fates, and yes, even your fates as well. Cold, Cooler, and Frieza! This is where it ends! As they are hit clean and slowly pushed back and consumed by the blast of Colossal Genki, it detonates and shakes Planet Namek to its core, with just nearly enough force to destabilize it and set it on an apocalyptic countdown. Though thankfully upon completing this miraculous attack, it appears that our heroes have finally earned a well-deserved peace for the invaded planet, avenging the Namekians and every other people oppressed by the Galactic Empire. In the aftermath, the heroes, King Piccolo, Prince Vegeta, and Elec all convene, and as best they can under the circumstances, celebrate their seeming victory and successful mission with ragged banter over all the things they are excited to do once they get home, juxtaposed to how much the boys are not looking forward to being grounded for the rest of their lives by their terrifying mothers. An outcome Muezli confirms it's very much realistic, causing everyone to share a laugh. Vegeta seems quiet and down over the death of Turles though, but surprisingly, Raditz punches him in the arm lightly and tells him to keep his head up, figuring that as soft-hearted as his father is, they'll definitely wish him back to life, so they can finally settle the score, which Goku and Granola in their own ways second and third, lifting the prince's spirits a bit, as he pridefully claims that'll never happen, while Elec, now reverted back to base form, turns to Bardock, thanking him for his services, and smoothly declaring that now they're under the table deals and debts are all officially evened up. However, looking around the ruins of Namek, the con man's mind is already spinning, and so he notes aloud that since since he is now technically the strongest remaining being in the universe, taking over the infrastructure of the Frieza Force will be much easier than he ever anticipated, whether he has his family with him or not. Still, actually showing loyalty to his own clan for once, he offers them one final generous deal. If they simply allow him to take the Dragon Balls for himself, he'll be more than happy to leave them in their backwater planet and the Namekians alone permanently, since he can bet they'll revive them too. Hell, if the Scarred Saiyan wants, he'll even draft up deeds for both Earth and Namek, formally recognizing Bardock as the owner of both. That old broker and money-making instinct returning to the forefront now that the crisis is seemingly at an end. But this brief moment of respite, tense as it already was, is violently snatched away. Raditz's eyes suddenly widen as he is the first to notice something horrifying amidst the clearing smoke. He points a trembling finger, directing everyone's gaze to the terrifying truth. They have only succeeded in injuring King Cold and his children, but they are not dead. Out of the burning fog, the Imperial father and sons reappear, their bodies heavily scorched, bruised, bleeding, and radiating pure, unadulterated malice. Without a single word of warning, Frieza and Cooler fire off a lightning-fast, lethal death beam directly at Bardock's chest, which King Piccolo reacts to on pure warrior instinct, barely managing to violently shove Bardock out of the way, taking the piercing beam straight through his own torso, as it appears to kill the Super Namekian King on the spot. The tyrants are still standing, and now seem completely unhinged by the attempt on their lives. And so the Wicked Bloodline decides to retaliate by making someone the Krillin of this timeline. King Cold's telekinetic grip snaps outward for a royal execution. Seeing that the cruel trajectory of the invisible hold is about to seize either Goku or Granola, Raditz acts without a single thought for his own safety, only a need to thwart the King's desire for domination, leaping forward and brutally sacrificing himself by putting his body between the younger boys and the telekinetic death grip. In spite of the Saiyan boys' immense bravery and selflessness, an understandable amount of pure human cowardice in the face of such absolute evil takes over. Raditz's final words are not a defiant boast or a mocking of his enemy, but instead desperate, blood-curdling screams for his brothers, for his father, for Muezli, for Grandpa Gohan, or for his mother to save him. But all Bardock and the others can do is scream and beg for his son's life, their hands outstretched in sheer helplessness, before Raditz is cruelly and instantly blown up into stardust without a single second thought. As this happens, Bardock's eyes snap to the prone form of King Piccolo, seemingly dead all over again. If only he'd saved himself instead, Earth would still have Dragon Balls, and they could bring Raditz back. But instead, the damn Demon King had decided to be heroic and die for the man he once tried to kill in a theme park. And because of it, Raditz, his firstborn, the son he had so often found himself being far too hard on, the one he never as often as he should have, had taken the time to tell just how incredibly proud of him he truly was, and who now may be gone forever. Especially if we grant that in all their adventures, hijinks, and intense training done off-screen, it's not impossible that like Bardock and Muezli before him, Raditz surely could have died and been revived during a prior crisis. And this fear and feeling of all hope being lost causes something fundamental to completely snap within Bardock's psyche. Trembling with an apocalyptic, white-hot anger over the cruel demise of his beloved firstborn, the air around the Scarred Saiyan begins to violently crackle with a terrifying unknown energy, and a scornful promise to make Cold feel this pain of losing a child 50-fold over. Though mirroring this intense sentiment of patriarchal protectiveness, King Cold refused to let the wily Saiyan manage any more dangerous tricks. Seeing the erratic, terrifying spikes in Bardock's energy and the growing sense of electricity in the air as the planet itself begins to storm, Cold turns and yells at the dazed Frieza and Cooler to snap out of it and stop getting caught up watching a monkey's light show. Especially since a furious Muezli and opportunistic Elec are already rushing forward to launch a desperate re-engagement before they can rally fully and pick off more of the Z-fighters, expressing an absolute cold indifference about the physical survival of the planet or their remaining enemies. King Cold raises his hands, leading Frieza and Cooler into generating a colossal family supernova death ball, with the apocalyptic sphere of Imperial Ki rapidly swelling until finally matching and exceeding the terrifying sky-blotting proportions of the previous spirit bomb. Gloating imperiously about their eternal victory, the three lords cast the tyrannical spear down upon the Scarred Saiyan and doomed world, allowing the cataclysmic weight to completely consume him and the very crust of Planet Namek in a devastating, immensely entertaining, and beautifully blinding flash of destructive light. For a terrifying moment, it appears the heroes indeed were completely unable to change their own cruel fates. However, as his physical body is blasted into the deep threshold of the otherworld, it is as if Bardock's consciousness begins to project far, far away into another time and place entirely. It is like tapping indirectly into a deep-seated genetic Saiyan memory, something deeper and more fierce than the Uzaru ever was, almost acting as a form of high-level image training or intense astral projection that all leaves Bardock wondering if this surreal phenomenon is something akin to the future sight ability that Muezli had told him about. Then suddenly, waking up in a cold sweat in this entirely unfamiliar, prehistoric landscape, his sheer terror and disorientation caused him to panic, nearly harming an unfamiliar small alien boy who was simply trying to tend to his wounds and help him. Now on a bizarre, prehistoric marshland that reminds him of Planet Vegeta, the psychological whiplash hits Bardock like a physical blow. The phantom image of Raditz vaporizing into stardust is still burned into his retinas, his ears still ringing with his son's final desperate screams. Disoriented, his heart hammering against his ribs in sheer terror, his survival instincts had flared on pure instinct. With this event officially beginning, the highly anticipated adaptation of the legendary episode of Bardock OVA storyline, but entirely rewritten and changed through the lens of this altered timeline, obviously. For example, in the original OVA, Bardock was still a cold, emotionally detached mercenary who rejected the kindness of Planet Plant's primitive inhabitants as he tried to piece together what exactly was going on, only tolerating them out of a stoic isolationist pride. But here, history has forged a completely different man, because he has spent so many years living side by side with Muezli and Gina as true partners, sharing the burdens of survival and actively raising a family. This Bardock possesses a significantly kinder, gentler, and more emotionally mature heart. He isn't just a weapon anymore, he is a father. Some would even call him a hero, despite his personal disdain for the term. So looking down at the trembling, but fiercely compassionate young alien boy who continues to stick by his side, Barry, Bardock doesn't see a nuisance. He sees the echoes of Goku, Granola, and Raditz when they were small. He takes a heavy, grounding breath, retracts his calloused hand, and offers a quiet, rough apology. Thanks to his inherent, deeply cultivated humanity, Bardock can build a bridge of trust far faster than his canon counterpart ever could. He thanks and allows Barry and his peaceful village and people for their hospitality and kindness in deciding to shelter, feed, and heal his broken body, while he tries to piece together what exactly is happening. Not only is Bardock openly expressing gratitude and communicating, rather than just grunting in reclusive silence, but he is also willing to selflessly protect the kind people who took him in when they are accosted by what appear to be mercenaries using rather ancient-looking gear. Yet, beneath his grateful and heroic exterior, Bardock's mind is still as violent a storm as it was in the OVA, if not more. As he sits by the village fire, watching the Plantians go about their peaceful lives, he desperately tries to piece together the cosmic logic of his current reality. He remembers the cataclysmic, blinding light of the Code family's attack, but now that he thinks about it more, he also remembers of the warning of a backlash to his prior wishes given to him by the Eternal Dragons. He begins to deeply ponder if this situation, and possible displacement into the ancient past, is the true, dangerous side effect of the monumental, rule-breaking wish he had made to defuse Shinran's rumble to revive himself, along with anyone else who was killed in the campaign of the Heater family to take power from the Wicked Bloodline. Pondering such a highly complicated temporal paradox, though, always just leaves the veteran Saiyan soldier deeply confused, frustrated, and intensely irritated, with no concrete answers, and the burning desire to get back to his own time, his friends, mates, and surviving children on a dying Namek. All the stranded father can do is channel his frantic anxiety into the only language he still truly knows, brutal, unyielding training. And so day and night, the craggy mountains of ancient Planet Plant echo with the shockwaves of his fists, as he pushes his baseline limits to even more unprecedented heights, preparing for a war he isn't even sure he can still return to. This lingering frustration is eventually cut short, however, when the mysterious hooded figure who had previously appeared to Cooler as a fleeting apparition through time finally makes his own terrifying physical presence known, emerging from the shadows of the past and demanding information about Bardock after he defeated his men. The ancient galactic tyrant and space pirate Lord Shield, the progenitor of the Wicked Bloodline, appears. And despite the point in history we are at, somehow, Shield makes direct mention of the cataclysmic events occurring far into the future, sadistically stating that he has become acutely aware of a massive historical paradox after he hunted down and killed another bizarre stranger who didn't belong in this era. And from the vital mission objectives he was able to brutally squeeze out of that self-proclaimed time patroller before they died, Lord Shield has now become temporally cognizant enough to send dark prophetic visions of the future forward through time in order to actively influence and guide his own mutant prodigy descendants. And so as they face off, Shield boasts that if he executes Bardock and annihilates every living soul on this prehistoric planet right now, he will permanently break the paradox they've created in the favor of his growing galactic empire. And so by killing the root of the Saiyan bloodline here and now, represented by Bardock, he will completely reshape the entire timeline to his own cruel designs, ensuring that the freezing iron grip of the Wicked Bloodline will never, ever end throughout the history of the cosmos. However, the pirate's mistake is in thinking that Bardock cares about any of this mumbo-jumbo. As the moment a way out of this nightmare is revealed, he is instantly on the attack against Shield, just as ferociously as Bardock would fight him in the original OVA, if not more aggressively, since there is far more to lose than gain in this battle. Thus, the rest of the confrontation between these storied figures plays out structurally just like the original OVA for the most part, but the context is entirely transformed, as the fact that Bardock doesn't really need to waste time or hold back helps to center his mind, allowing him to simply make use of his combined Kaioken and Spirit of the Saiyan's power to overwhelm the ancient space-traveling warrior pirate, with Chill's only weapons against this being the absurd strength his lineage was blessed with and his minor awareness of the flow of time. Though all this serves to do is reveal the inevitability that fighting against a man driven to return to his home, family, and sanity is a losing battle. And so as the conflict and revelation of what has happened pushes Bardock's emotions over the edge, he begins to rage, feeling stark animosity towards whatever forces of greedy merchandise and nonsensical sharp-jumping bullshit have brought him to this point, feeling more energized than ever for some inexplicable reason. Bardock barely notices he suddenly begins to dominate the battle, with his ego and evolution making history as he brutally and efficiently dismantles Chill, overpowering and dashing him across the ground like a puny god, in a showing of overwhelming combat strength that could only be described as legendary. Seeing the scarred Saiyan finally free himself from the paradox without realizing he has undergone a transformation of his own or created an all-new aberration in history, he reawakens at the exact agonizing moments immediately following Raditz's brutal execution, forced to relive the psychological whiplash of his son's death, along with the terrifying split second where King Code and his children attempt to remove him as their largest obstacle with their unified family deathball. Though upon witnessing his son's murder a second time, the sheer, unadulterated cosmic power that was originally meant to defeat Lord Chilled ages ago is truly unleashed in this, the more needed era. Ages after the first Golden Warrior originally appeared, Planet Namek begins to violently shake, shine, and storm again, with no hopes of King Cold, Cooler, or Frieza stopping what is coming this time. The entire sky turns a blinding, flashing dark green as glorious golden lightning tears through the atmosphere. It comes along with a roar of anger for the scarred Saiyan, heralding the arrival of the ultimate cosmic legend, the Super Saiyan. Hair flashing and spiking to a brilliant, fluffy, burning gold, and eyes hardening into a fierce, piercing teal, Super Saiyan Bardock stands at the apex of the world. Utilizing every single ounce of his newly obtained legendary power, Bardock steps forward as if he were unimpeded, single-handedly lifting and walking with the oppressive family death ball, to the point of hoisting the heavy attack above his head and lobbing it back up, using his monumental physical might to violently redirect the apocalyptic attack away from his family and friends, with a reaffirmed declaration that his enemies will pay for trying to hurt them. Now with this level of power to actually defy them and make good on the warning of their ancestors to fear the Saiyan race finally reached, the Wicked Bloodline are now completely desperate. The violent detonation of the deflected family death ball on the exact opposite side of Namek places the planet on a strict 5-minute doomsday countdown, while maintaining his recently reclaimed sanity as long as he humanly can in this volatile new transformation-boosted state. Bardock orders Granola and Muezli to take Goku, and then now revealed to thankfully still be alive Piccolo, and get the hell off the planet this instant. Granola and Goku initially try to fiercely protest, refusing to leave Bardock behind under such circumstances, while Muezli remains intensely quiet, as if she is mesmerized by Bardock, while Elec waits to see if he will be offered a favor in exchange for protecting the Saiyan's family. Instead though, Bardock firmly orders the young Cerulean to listen to his father for once, and do as he says, explicitly stating that he is trusting in Granola as the second oldest sibling to protect the family, seeing Granola completely frozen himself for a moment, as he is so deeply touched by this final, official declaration that their families have permanently merged, and that the scarred Saiyan, that Bardock has truly transitioned from the target he once swore vengeance on to the adopted father who would do anything for him, sees the scarfed sniper finally agree, knocking out his younger Saiyan sibling to avoid more arguing, and then hoisting the unconscious bodies of King Piccolo and Goku over his shoulders. Granola zooms off at maximum speed, straining his eyes to search the distance and try and find a suitable ship for escape as the doomsday clock winds down and the ultimate, fiercest final battle of this what if so far begins. Muezli, however, states that she has absolutely no intention of leaving, while noting that Gine would never forgive her for one thing. She smoothly reminds Bardock of her sacred promise to always keep an eye on him and keep him out of trouble. So with a brave smirk, she notes that if he's about to go completely mad with new power just because he got a fancy new golden form, then she'll still happily put him down herself after this is over, adding that she doesn't care how handsome the blonde hair makes him look, to which Elec mimes gagging as he reminds him that they need to hurry this up, resolving to for once stay and get the job done himself, centering himself one last time with this warning from Elec and this warm, perfect joke from his second mate, no, one of his future wives. Bardock lets out a fierce grin as his Saiyan blood finally allows him to begin enjoying this battle, meant to avenge his and every other exterminated and oppressed people of the universe. Together, Bardock, Muezli, and Elec face off against King Cold, Cooler, and Frieza. The final world-ending bout then erupts as awakened power Elec and Super Saiyan Muezli flank Super Saiyan Bardock, throwing themselves into a frantic, hyper-coordinated melee against the Wicked Bloodline, who are forced to exert every single ounce of their 100% combined power just to survive now, with Bardock even demanding a better fight than what Chill put up, in a way that strikes overwhelming fear into the hearts of the space pirates' descendants. The Super Saiyan and Cerulean still fight in perfect synchronicity that can only be born from a deep bond, while the awakened Heater finds little trouble working with them thanks to his sheer breadth of knowledge and cunning, allowing him to always stay at least one step ahead of both his friends and foes, and better fight alongside the two alien Z-fighters and their campaign to defy fate, as the difference in battle power, fighting skill, desire to win, and luck begin to form an insurmountable gap. Like in canon, some incredibly slick tactical maneuvers are pulled off from those on the sidelines, as with his super long-range telepathy, King Kai suddenly realizes that King Piccolo, and thus Kami, are still alive. And not to mention, because Bardock and his crew only took a copy of the Dragon Radar into space with them, Bulma's original radar should still be operational on Earth, as would Bulma herself, and a couple of other veteran Dragon Ball seekers, including Gine, who could easily help Mr. Popo, so that even if they didn't have a radar, they could still locate the Dragon Balls faster than in canon. The only real setback being that Earth currently has 9 Dragon Balls again to find instead of 7, and the possibility of needing to reconfigure and fuse Shinron into Rumbo after being separated when Kami died, which could pretty easily be mitigated still. So as a result, it in turn becomes even easier and quicker to gather and make a wish on the Dragon Balls of Earth, which inherently allows the heroes to do a bit more than just revive anyone killed by Frieza and his men, or the grief generated from their actions in this timeline as in canon. And so covering his bases completely, King Kai gets exceptionally crafty here, checking just like in canon how far the exact jurisdiction and parameters of the wish can be pushed. He then skillfully words the desire as wishing to revive every single soul who was brutally killed by the Galactic Empire, or who had died in the pursuits, whether noble or not, to stop or depose them. This means the wish is structurally meant to affect populations as broad as the recently killed Namekians, all the way back to the slaughtered Saiyans, Cerealians, and any other civilizations who died in the historical conflicts, instigated by the Wicked Bloodline, and with the earlier Saiyan saga wish by Bardock to be revived, already restoring many extinct people and rebuilding destroyed planets. This new wish pushes the boundaries of reality even further, entailing that a few iconic planets like Planet Vegeta be fully remade and restored in the process, so that Trigun's revived souls actually have somewhere to return to. Though considering how much absolute chaos, cosmo-political instability, and potential evil this could bring about on account of the wish not discriminating who exactly it brings back to life, Rumbo, the trickster dragon, is in full agreement to cooperate directly with Shinron for the wish, amping the power of Earth's twin dragons to perform feats usually out of their capability, like reviving large populations who have been dead for more than a year. So pulling their mystical draconian power together, they essentially cast a super revival over the entirety of Universe 7, a renaissance wave of light that completely reverses the systematic destruction and oppression imposed by Frieza and his cruel clan for generations, sweeps across the universe, changing it in ways that will ripple down the timeline forever, further causing variants and differences that make it even less recognizable to the canon story of Dragon Ball we are so much more familiar with this monumental act successfully restoring the lives of those on Namek who had never been revived by the Earth's Dragon Balls. It also revives the Grand Elder Guru, along with his Eternal Dragon, as if he had actually planned for this exact cosmic outcome all along, with them promptly contacting the also recently revived Nail nearby. Guru, Kami, and King Kai seamlessly coordinate so that the final remaining wish on Porunga can be used. Their objective is to get everyone brought back to life and those fighting for good on Namek, and see that they are immediately transported safely to Earth, leaving behind only Frieza, King Code, and Cooler to die with the planet they killed. However, intercepting this transmission, Bardock is much more stern and uncompromised than Goku ever was in canon, as he fiercely orders them to revise the parameters of this wish, so that he will intentionally be left behind on the dying planet with the evil Imperial family to finish this once and for all, with Muezli immediately seconding this, firmly stating that the exact same thing goes for her. But on the other hand, hearing this option to leave, Elec pipes up, frantically screaming that he agreed to no such thing, when he suddenly realizes his only remaining ticket to freedom from this apocalyptic danger is about to disappear with everyone else. Just as he panics, he looks across the horizon to see Turles, Gas, and his other Heater siblings successfully revived by the wish, just long enough to briefly reunite with them from afar, and take note of the amazing, powerful transformation they have undergone, with Turles and Gas stubbornly even both trying to rejoin the battle, before they are instantly transported away by another flash of dragon magic, followed immediately by the Namekian wishing orbs blasting off into the sky to follow their creator. By direct result, this sets the climax for the Namek arc to more accurately and beautifully mirror canon, as for the absolute final time, King Cold, Cooler, and Frieza clash in a burning arena against Elec, Muezli, and Bardock. The dying planet shatters beneath their heels, as Elec, fueled by desperate ambition, utilizes razor-sharp key constructs and jagged energy blades to fiercely disrupt Frieza's full-power, heavy-crushing swings. Beside him, Muezli achieves full power with her own transformed state, as her twin crimson eyes crackle with blinding intensity. She predicts the routes and patterns of Cooler's lethal rushes and death crashes, providing flawless vital point cover fire that forces the armored tyrant onto the defensive alongside his family. This flawless tactical anchor allows Bardock to run wild and act as an unstoppable golden juggernaut, fueled by pure anger and battle lust, completely ignoring his own safety with no need to dodge or defend, as he can put his all into systematically dismantling a frantic and unraveling King Code and his children with a brutal barrage of Super Saiyan fury, intensified by using the borrowed power pole left to him by his youngest son. As a result of this limit-shattering onslaught, it is while moving in a fluid rhythm born of deep, earned synchronization that the unlikely trio of allies standing against the Empire in this battle of fate relentlessly punishes every micro-mistake made by the fractured Imperial dynasty, continuing as time winds down and the battlefield becomes an absolute meat grinder of traded blows, until the tide violently shifts entirely, making it abundantly clear that the tyrants' individual powers are no longer worth worrying about, as their poor training and conditioning means that if eventually their stamina catastrophically plummets under the weight of their own maximum output. By this point, Frieza can't properly maintain his 100% maximum power state, and rapidly becomes a total liability to his clan, on account of his being slightly younger and more inexperienced compared to Kanon, while Cooler's elite and precious fifth form, being something he has so rarely used in active combat for the sake of a big reveal, possesses a similar, but not as drastic stamina drain that renders him entirely de-transformed and left in the same position as Frieza before the 5-minute timer is even up, since this battle would have dragged out far longer than what he would have faced in this state during the events of movie 5, meaning as both brothers are left unable to contend in a struggle of this level any longer. It is almost entirely up to their father to protect them and himself, as their enemies only seem to grow more ruthless and desperate of this gamble for survival, as now that they have no claim to the title of strongest in the universe, this battle officially devolved into little more than an uncivilized jumping by some hoodlum monkey and the other upstart inferior species who dared to push back against the glorious clan. Thus, together as one, the Wicked Bloodline all suffer a definitive defeat that appears entirely fatal right from the beginning, on account of their opponents in this timeline, all lacking anywhere near the amount of pity or mercy displayed by Goku and Kanon, with Bardock even sensing inherently like his son would, the latent potential to grow stronger in each of those monsters, should they only undergo a slight change in mentality. That is to say, there is absolutely no moment where Bardock, Muezli, or Elec would nearly spare any member of the Wicked Bloodline, let alone give them their own precious energy to escape the planet's explosion with, and thus are not reluctantly forced to kill them in a classic you fool moment. That would sadly be entirely out of character for everyone, but especially for our hardened veteran soldier against their mortal nemesis like Bardock, even with the changes he's undergone in our story so far. So after combining their might for one last anger-fueled raging blast of ki, the three unlikely allies of justice and nightmares to the Empire simply and ruthlessly leave their exhausted, broken, and mangled opponents to die in the impending, fiery explosion of the very planet they decided to destroy without a single moment of hesitation or consideration of unearned mercy. As the cataclysmic energy builds further, Frieza, Cooler, and King Cold lie utterly broken in the dirt, their forms shattered, and their pride completely eradicated. With less than 60 seconds remaining on Namek's doomsday clock, Elec wipes the sweat from his brow, a smug, triumphant smirk returning to his face. Reverting to his base form, the broker smoothly turns to Bardock and Muezli, already calculating how he's going to use the newly restored heater force to clean the vacuum left by the Frieza force. He gestures towards a trio of still intact, nearby Ginyu Force and Armored Squadron attack pods, which he had spotted earlier. Well, it's been a pleasure, my dear friends, Elec scoffs, dusting off his pristine uniform as he finds and re-equips his coat miraculously. But I believe this is our cue to leave. I'll take the left pod, and you two can have the matching pair of Ginyu Force pods like a sweet little cup. But before the words can even fully leave his mouth, a blinding streak of energy violently shreds the air. Muesli's red cerulean eye flashes with ruthless, calculating precision as she fires a pinpoint blast that completely demolishes the dashboard, an internal guidance system of Elec's intended pod, reducing it, like every other ship they've seen, to a useless sparking hunk of metal. As Elec stumbles back, his eyes widen in absolute horrified shock. The eldest heater screams petulantly, his voice cracking with protest that they had a deal, as the ground beneath them literally begins to split apart more, magma bubbling to the surface. However, Muezli, in a cold, hard, and still utterly devoid of mercy tone, reminds that they actually finished that deal, and in fact, they're almost even, as she steps into one of the other operational pods alongside Bardock, informing the crafty heater that she hadn't forgotten what he and his family did to the Ceruleans, regardless of Frieza's order. And just because they won doesn't mean she's forgotten the campaign of greed he led that nearly took her family from her a second time in a row. Obviously, she wasn't just going to sit back and allow him to take over a universe ripe for plunder. The only thing he gets are the ashes of this planet, since in the end, it's only right considering all the work he did for and with the Empire, even at the cost of his own flesh and blood. Meanwhile, Bardock doesn't say a word, obviously in total agreement. He merely casts one final, chilling glare at the conniving broker, a look that tells Elec everything he needs to know, despite the informant's insistent curses that this will not be the last they hear of him, as he swears he'll get them both back, and if not, he'll haunt them, though they simply fall on deaf ears, while behind his back, he attempts to form a weapon and attack them to steal one of the viable crafts for himself, though instead, he just does exactly what Muezli predicted he would, as the version of her he attacks is revealed to be an afterimage, before he is suddenly shot directly in the back by the real Cerulean, leaving him with the same fatal wound he once inflicted upon her, and in another lifetime would even inflict to Granola, as the con man too is bested and left for dead, with Muezli even sighing sweetly that she's willing to do that for a very long time, bidding her own former nemesis farewell. With a hiss of pneumatic pressure, the pod doors slam shut. The thrusters ignite with a deafening roar, launching Bardock and Muezli directly into the stratosphere, and leaving a frantic, desperate, and screaming Elec completely stranded on the cracking, apocalyptic surface of Namek, a fitting end for one who made his fortune off of desolated worlds such as this. Within seconds, the planet reaches its absolute critical mass, detonating in a cataclysmic blinding supernova of holy Genki and planetary crust that hopefully vaporized the remaining tyrants and traitorous broker alike, while everyone gathered on King Kai's planet and Earth Earth would react as in canon, assuming the worst fates possible for Bardock and Muezli, who have already been revived by the Earth's dragons. In the weeks following the destruction of Planet Namek, the universe tries to find its footing after the reality warping effects of the super universal revival wish. On Earth, the Z fighters return home to a bittersweet peace. Raditz and those who are lost on the Saiyan invasion, including Nappa, Puar, Emperor Pilaf, Jaco, Ox King, Master Shen, and Tien, begin to be successfully revived over the course of the Namekian stay on Earth, seeing them slowly returning alongside trillions of souls across Universe 7, whose lives were cut short by the historical tyranny of the Frieza Force and the Heater family. But just as King Kai deeply feared, restoring entire civilizations and remaking planets like Planet Vegeta creates an unprecedented universal political nightmare, as the cosmos is suddenly flooded with billions of displaced, highly aggressive Saiyans, confused Cerealians, and countless space pirates and traveling warriors who suddenly wake up alive and on unfamiliar planets with nowhere to go and nothing to do other than cause trouble, shattering the already shaky established galactic order and creating a chaotic, fractured universe that looks completely unrecognizable compared to the canon story we know. In other words, setting the groundwork for things like future movie and OVA villains to appear. While back on Earth, our space heroes face a terrifying trial of their own. Just as Muezli predicted, the moment her children step foot back on the planet after disobeying her, they are met by the unyielding, apocalyptic wrath of Guinea, which puts the fear instilled in them by the Wicked Bloodline to shame. Though all in all, she is simply happy they are all safe, admitting she had multiple times got worried enough to try going after everyone, with this resulting in her having accidentally activated the self-destructing Jaco ship and even commissioned the refurbishment and then reverse engineering of Kami's old ship into a brand new one by Dr. Briefs, since she wanted to be able to get there in 6 days or less, though thankfully there was never any need for that. However, when informed of Bardock and Muezli staying on the Dynamic, Guinea, as Bulma in canon, wouldn't seem very torn up about it, simply informing everyone that they can wish them back, which leads to everyone on Earth learning that the duo are in fact still alive and plan to return to Earth when they are ready. Thus, grounded for what feels like eternity for sneaking off to a literal cosmic war zone, the younger Z fighters are forced to trade their combat training for intensive chores, with even Prince Vegeta, Nappa, Gas, Oil, and Maki being bizarrely subjected to the punishment, and treated as at least temporary Sonchun serial clan members for the sake of teaching them a lesson. While worst of all, Turles winds up stealing the Capsule Corp ship in order to both avoid that nonsense and to return to space and begin searching for his brother to find out how to attain the power of a Super Saiyan for himself, with Nappa, Vegeta, and even Raditz to some extent, initially wanting to go with him for the sake of returning to the restored planet Vegeta, as for a time, an era of long-awaited and well-earned peace returns to the Earth. Over the course of a few more 130-day cycles, the rest of the dead are revived, while Kami, King Piccolo, and Monaito enjoy fellowship with their people for the first time in generations. And when all is said and done, the Namekians finally see fit to set off for a new home, after Grand Elder Guru officially pronounces Muri as the new Grand Elder. However, still having a bit more time on his lifespan, he decides to stick around for a couple more years and look after his children, allowing him to better train up Nail and Muri to fully succeed himself in Slug. And so after a tearful and heartfelt goodbye between Goku, Nail, Raditz, and Granola, the thankful Namekians express their love and gratitude to their friends and saviors before departing the Earth, as the days begin to blur together in a marathon of everyone enjoying their downtime, with Demon King Piccolo now returning to the realm he once sought to conquer, and being praised by Kami for the amount of good he can sense growing in his counterpart, as well as questioning if he would like to inherit the title of Guardian from him, and especially what he plans to do with the egg he laid, now that he has returned, with both these questions being rather stunning and bewildering to Piccolo Daimao, who must now admit that he hadn't thought that far when laying it as opposed to canon. At the same time, feeling new and stronger feelings than ever before, as they begin to fully enter puberty, growth spurts, and the changes that come with the transition from boys to young men, Raditz and Granola begin to mature, including them realizing their growing interest in girls, specifically Bulma and Launch, while with nowhere else to go, Gas, Oil, and Maki take up temporary residence on the lookout, hoping to receive updates on the fate of Elec, Bardock, and Muezli. As this is happening, however, an old enemy reappears, thanks to the power he receives as the Machio star makes his arrival after another 5,000-year cycle traveling through the solar system, allowing the immortal Garlic Jr. to escape the dead zone and hatch a new scheme involving the Blackwater Mist invented by his father, while he is joined by his new underlings, Spice, Vinegar, Salt, and Mustard. This mini-saga, however, would likely be even easier to solve than the original 10 or so episode arc in the DBZ anime, since everyone is stronger and the main protagonist of it would be Goku rather than Gohan, who would likely be able to adapt and figure things out a bit quicker than Gohan did, especially since at this point, members of his family get brainwashed pretty often, so fighting Blackwater Miss Guinea isn't so much scary and off-putting as it is exciting for the younger Saiyan. Thankfully, King Piccolo and Krillin would also still be around to help Goku out, though whether a younger version of Marin would still appear in this arc as either Krillin's, Raditz, or Granola's girlfriend for the sake of some one-off gags is far less clear and of much lesser consequence to me, since in the end, they and probably Vegeta, who is also maturing, would likely already be at odds with one another, and may end up being infected by the Blackwater Mist, making things at least somewhat hard for Goku. This mini-arc would also go a bit quicker because of the Z-Fighters present here who weren't in canon, like for example, because he has no lungs to inhale the mist with, or a bloodstream to be infected by those who have, Dr. Wheeler would also be immune to the Blackwater mist. That is, at least if he hasn't gotten his new body yet, and thus would be able to help the heroes out, while Monaito, Oil, and Maki's presence on the lookout with Kami and Mr. Popo would give them extra aid when traveling to the resting place of former Guardians, meaning they would able to spread the sacred water and cure the world faster, so that in the end, Goku would simply destroy the Makio Star as Gohan did, turning Garlic Jr. into a raisin, and trapping him back on the other side of the dead zone, or at least it should have, as due to the speed at which the arc is solved, Garlic Jr. is actually a tiny bit further away from the portal to the dead zone by the time he loses his power, as he would be in canon, allowing the dead zone to close just moments before Garlic Jr. is pushed back into it, trapping the immortal Serpent Clan member in this dimension without the henchman or the amp of the Makian Star, which was sorely needed to make him relative to the heroes, as he is left helpless on the lookout, with King Piccolo mocking him and Kami threatening to seal him with a Mafuba. In the end though, the proud and jealous son of a former candidate to be Guardian of the Earth is left with no other choice but to reluctantly join Mr. Popo and unofficially Monaito as one of the Guardian's attendants, while Son Goku celebrates with Krillin, Dr. Wheelo, and King Piccolo of his having saved the day and turned a bad guy good without the need of his parents or his brother's help for once. Meanwhile, far away in the dark vacuum of space, where Planet Namek once stood, the true horrifying cost of the universal shift is finally realized, as just like in canon, an Imperial mothership searches for their fallen tyrants. Its captain, the legendary space pirate Lord Shield, paradoxically having survived his ancient injuries to live fully into the modern era, and having kept quiet with the specific goal of maintaining a low profile until this specific time. There, his deep space recovery teams locate the mangled, barely breathing bodies of Frieza, Cooler, and Cold. Looking down at his shattered descendants, Shield promises to fix them up, immediately ordering his crew to set course directly for the mysterious sentient mechanical world, the Big Getty Star, where using its forbidden, self-replicating alien technology, the scientists systematically rebuild the tyrannical Wicked Bloodline members, using advanced cybernetic and mechanical enhancements, while their original destroyed bodies are kept permanently and safely suspended on a high-tech life support, as the Getty Star processes their DNA to fuel an unstoppable and interconnected army of metacopies of each family member. And so at this joyous family reunion, with an infinite supply of metallic bodies and multi-generational malice, the reconstructed Wicked Bloodline sets a direct, vengeful course for Earth next. As the Armada closes in on the solar system, the proximity radars on Chilt's command bridge begin to flare. Tracking the data, Frieza and Cooler instantly deduce with absolute certainty that it must be the Super Saiyan and Cerelia, intending to return to the planet below. So seeking total annihilation, revenge, and entertainment, the Empire storms Earth's atmosphere with an overwhelming vanguard. Their forces are heavily bolstered by their own meta-clones, the original Cyclopean robotic soldiers from the Getty Star, and the harder remnants of the Galactic Empire that managed to escape Turles' wrath when he was tearing through deep space to locate Bardock, as the star itself begins to latch onto and consume the planet. The sudden invasion forces Earth's defenders into an immediate crisis. Sensing the staggering apocalyptic weight of the incoming key signatures, Turles steps up at the current strongest and aggressively takes command of the scattered Z-Fighters. Recognizing the sheer crushing scale of the threat though, the dark-skinned Saiyan commands everyone to heavily suppress their power levels and hold position until they can properly evaluate what they are dealing with, as based on the raw, suffocating pressure of the enemy's presence, Turles grimly deduces that even his own evil Saiyan power, backed by Gine and the Z-Fighters, won't be anywhere near enough to overcome this metallic nightmare, with none of them even recognizing who Shield is. But as the heroes brace themselves for a desperate guerrilla war, the unfolding scene completely defies their expectations. Instead of any of the currently present Z-Fighters, or even the missing Bardock and Muezli arriving to confront Shield and his metallic lineage, a lone, completely unfamiliar young woman boldly steps into the clearing. She carries a striking, battle-hardened appearance, bearing a peculiar outfit, a distinct hairstyle, and a massive, heavy-caliber sniper rifle strapped firmly across her back. And much like the canon timeline, this mysterious stranger calmly and fearlessly approaches the Armada. Annoyed by her presence, Shield and his cybernetic kin scoff, sharply ordering a squad of scouts to spread out across the wasteland and flush out the real targets. However, the moment the soldiers heed the command and take a single step forward, a series of invisible, kinetic shockwaves violently shear through the valley. Before anyone can even track the trajectory, the scouting squad is instantly blown to absolute bits, their bodies cleanly blasted into chunks of falling metal and flesh. Standing perfectly still, without having moved an inch, the mysterious girl looks directly at the tyrants, confidently claiming that she had already perfectly lined up and fired those fatal shots the exact moment she arrived on the scene, and that the next ones would be for them, since they had far more Super Saiyans to deal with than they were ready for. As inexplicably, the mysterious girl too becomes the legendary Golden Warrior. Who is this mysterious girl, and why has she come here? What power has the Wicked Bloodline tapped into to keep their claim of the series' main antagonist for a bit longer? What is to become of Gas and the Heaters? What will the consequences of restoring so many like the Saiyans and Cerelians be? And what has kept Bardock and Muezli so long? Find out all this and more in the next exciting episode of Dragon Ball Z. What if Bardock's family escaped together?